It had the two actually professional companies from the real world, which is one IKEA in the morning, and the other one's the consultancy company, which is Arup, who raised their approaches towards the circularity and transition of circular design into the from linear to circular design. IKEA pointed out that the circular, actually, if Dominique is in the audience, she was in the audience, I think, earlier. If she is still there, we can upgrade her to the panelists position.
I'm doing it right now.
She's online. Okay, here she is. Thanks. So that was raising questions how the companies actually are learning and discovering strategies towards the transition from linear to circular economy. And they were developing models within their own in-house models, actually, that will have a great impact to the community. And Arup also was demonstrating, ALVISE was demonstrating their approach to different approaches taken in different parts of the world with single projects as to the transition of the world to circularity. And with maybe not 100% like circular approach, but by percentage, the applications, architecture applications towards the circularity. So there is an open research agenda. It's obviously a research agenda within the private companies towards this transition. And also we have listened educational aspects, and where there has been always raised questions in many times in circularity discussions that this transition, it's a design-led transition. Designers are important in this transition process. And also education is very important in order to create the critical mass for the future, near future of the designers and the people who are aware about this transition. So what is our responsibility, as we are all here, researchers, architects, and not architects, I think educators, most of us, besides Dominique and ALVISE. And ALVISE is also, I think, has a part of being pursuing PhD as educator hat in it. So what kind of strategies we should raise to really, like what would be the profession's demand for education setup in to help this and to make an easy this transition towards from linear to circular economy. I will base first that question, then we can raise the questions among us if we don't receive any questions from the audience. ALVISE and Dominique, I will first address these questions. So as a professionals from the field, what was your expectations and how do you see the current position or the level of the designers? Are we ready to face this challenge, or what kind of the immediate steps we should take really to reach that gap?
I think if I can speak from our experience within IKEA, I would say that definitely in-house, we're on a very steep learning curve to try to adopt this new mindset and learn what it actually practically takes to transform our design thinking. And in terms of designers that we see coming to IKEA, we already see that there's a base knowledge and awareness and curiosity about this, which is a very important starting step for this. But I think because of where the understanding of what it takes to redesign the system is, it will take time for us to create the real critical mass to having real highly competent circular design teams in play. And if I may add, there's one discussion that I have had with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is this idea of embracing the concept of circularish. You know, really taking and being brave enough to take incremental steps now so we can learn and continue to move towards the bigger picture, because we won't get it 100% from the very beginning. And we see that from our design teams already today. We have some products that are designed to be 100% circular inherently because of the type of materials they use, and the knowledge we know about customer use. But to move the totality, it will take learning in incremental steps. So bravery needed, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And
thank you. I was very encouraged from the second session, all the intervention that I heard from you from across the world. I was thrilled. I particularly liked, Olga, you said that at the moment the relation between computational people and sustainable development people is an either or, and circular represents an opportunity maybe to put those two together. So that is personally my favorite reason why I think that we are in a very interesting and exciting times. I think also you represent a very selected part of the academia, carefully selected by BİRGÜL and their colleagues, and so I am aware of the fact that a lot of education is redundant and potentially detrimental. And so, as well as, I mean, it's not only the education, but, and so I think that I would like join forces seems the obvious next steps, and Ellen MacArthur Foundation is one of the conveners for joining forces, and we heard a number of others. I also liked, I think it was Thurston that said, I need to come, maybe we can unite some of the local effort. Very interesting, the idea of the local, this database for exchanging materials that is local versus global, at least to start with, and a confederation, or for, I don't know, lack of a better word, but a confederation of a lot of local systems seems to be an interesting potential way forward for that. Yeah, so I think that what I heard is very promising, and I learned a lot, and thank you for preparing the new profession to come. To be honest, we need, I think it was one of you talked about this program of teaching the teachers. Maybe it was Olga again, and I think that is probably the one part in which our industry can work with academia. If we do teach teachers, we can also do teaching the leaders in the companies, because to be honest, our younger colleagues are pretty much into this. You know, my kids are 20 years old, and they grew up with the idea of reduce, reuse, and recycle very much stuck into their minds since age 10. It's us, I think, that we missed that very foundational education. And I'll leave it there.
Okay. Okay. The point of that I made at the beginning of in the morning session, which was the daisy-changing profile of the designer, like the designers, architects or designers enabled with the power of the science to actually have a great contribution in the transition process in the new era of design. So that brings us to the computational design aspects of education, computational or data-driven aspects, because as designers, we are really educated in a manner more artistic manner or aesthetic based, but we're not good into the dealing with the let's say scientific methods, the methods that prove our decisions and can actually convince our clients or customers or users, however we put it, to the methods and to the methods that we are following will be useful in the future. So what and now my question is to the design educators, what will be the, I mean, Olga already mentioned, like as ALVISE mentioned, but the circular design actually will put together these two things. But considering the conservative approach around educations, not only in Turkey, to all over the world, how this really, because we need accelerated speed. The earth is not really, does not have passion anymore to change and exchange and ideas as we used to develop it. So how we will really accelerate the speed in education for raising education, the critical mass. So this is our question. This is the question that I put myself in front of myself. But I think this requires not only one researchers, but the group of the all over the world researchers and academics raise these questions that we can bridge this gap. So that is open questions to all of us. Anyone wants to take words?
Yeah, maybe I just want to mention that our students, and I'm sure like students at your universities as well, I mean, they have to deal with these questions like to a degree that is we hardly can imagine. I mean, every designer who will kind of graduate now, they will have to take circularity on board. So I think they are extremely curious about all these things, and they are very open to it. And then they also demanded from us to actually change the way how we teach. And I'm not saying we do already enough, but we have introduced a couple of new programs. We have introduced like a circularity kind of certificate that is a cross-disciplinary kind of program that goes not for the Department of the Built Environment, but also other departments can subscribe. And we have several courses to actually introduce these kind of new needs. But I think we still have to do much more. But I think one of the key drivers is really also the curiosity of our students, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yes, Ayla.
If I can just add a few things, I think I'm pretty optimistic, and I think we're doing right now a much better job in changing the education and having our curriculum and our programs reflect these dire needs of society compared to back when I was a student, or maybe the generation before me. So I would have to say some of the things that I find extremely useful is integrated curriculum. So rather than having separate courses, a design studio that focuses on theoretical projects and so on, and then building technology courses that focus again on isolated exercises, homeworks, and so on, really having an integrated approach where, for example, for architecture students, the design studios are really practice-based, application-driven courses, where all of the other support courses are feeding design projects. I found that extremely, I mean, it's challenging, but it's useful. So for example, in the design studios that I have been teaching over the last decade or so, students have to consider the concepts of circular economy, regenerative design, focus on existing buildings. You know, when I was educated, I think that we didn't even discuss the problem of existing buildings. Environmental concerns, yes, we did discuss, but I would say in my professional practice as an architect, 80 to 90% of projects were new construction, where the constraints are completely different. The future generation of architects will have to deal with the existing building stock, with the problems of the built environment. And I think their practices will focus on existing infrastructure and existing buildings a lot more than my generation or the generation before me. So we have to prepare future architects to think about challenges and constraints and problems that are associated with, like, analyzing the existing problems, existing buildings, existing communities, cities, and so on, that are not found in, designing new buildings. So I think, generally speaking, the future architects are better prepared than I was, but we still have a lot of opportunities to develop an integrated curriculum that reflects some of these things. One minor other thing that I would like to also mention is lifelong learning opportunities for professionals. I'm not really sure about the European context, but here in the US, there's such a need for high quality educational programs that focus on lifelong learning opportunities for professionals that have been in practice for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years of their career, especially on topics relating to sustainability, energy performance, building science, design methods. And I think as educators and as higher education institutions, we need to consider that typology of students and offer programs that are geared towards lifelong learners. And then the last thing that I would like to mention, globalization and the benefits of online teaching and learning. I think prior to pandemic, the general consensus was that we cannot really teach architecture or design online. The pandemic happened and look where we are. So I think democratizing access to higher education, lifelong learning opportunities, and kind of disassembling these barriers to finding the data, information, and so on is something that I'm passionate and optimistic about.
Thank you, Ayla. And also one point is that we really should, I think that is has a great importance, is this collaboration with the industry, like developing the models. I think one of you, either Torsten or Olga, mentioned that the developing learning methods or teaching methods in collaboration with industry will help a lot for accelerating the speed of embedding these new concerns and methodologies into the education curricula. I think that is also emerging now, and I know from Olga, your group is working a lot with this subject. You already raised hands, so I will give you words to you. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Ayla, for that wonderful message about online education. When I started doing that back in 2014, that was my PhD research actually, discussing Design Studio online. You know, I was met with doubt. Now, then Corona made it also relevant, and hey, here we are now. But okay, what I think is happening, and this has very much to do with this discussion we're having today, is that we're trying to bring things back together. I think one of the shortcomings of modernity was that we broke every single thing to a unit, and then we dealt with these units separately. And now we are kind of trying to trace our way back to looking at the world as a whole instead of different bits and pieces. And this is going to take maybe more time, but I realize the urgencies, and there's a lot of work being done, but it may take some time until we finally reach that point. In the meantime, I think, like Nicolescu says, we have work to do until the end of the world. We have so many options to approach this, and we have so many possibilities now, online, physically, by being online or physically present, by addressing the wider community. I think that's one of the main benefits of today, is to make learning communities that are not simply academic, but also happen in collaboration and with people from the industry, from practice. And we kind of make education relevant at times, and we make practice and industry relevant to academic research. So it's a two-way street. It's a full circle. And that's the key point we need to address, our relevance to times. This is why I talked about accountability before. What is what drives our decision making? Who do we want to be? Because ultimately it may look as if this is a systemic change, but I think that it is a change in our psyche to be part of the world and to be with others. And that is going to take some time, because now we learned how to be consumers, we learned how to be alone, egoistic, and narcissistic, and individuals. But going back to the collective will take some time. And in the meantime, all we can do is work towards this.
Yekta, you have raised your hand.
I just want to say that, well, I completely agree with Ayla on the fact that, well, we are a lot better compared to I don't know, 2 decades ago, you know. But what I'm noticing is that at the Department of Industrial Design, that I have been part of some departments throughout my career, I noticed that, well, from a theoretical aspect, the design students are not lacking anymore. We are introducing a lot of new concepts about, a lot of robust concepts about circular economy and how to enable them. I think the problem kind of lies with the fact that when they go out in the real world, I mean, the existing formalized processes are not matching up. I'm talking about this in the sense that, well, they go out, they learned all these alternative and groundbreaking methods and tools and ways of managing them. But then again, when they go out, they also notice that the other companies are doing, as Dominique mentioned, doing incremental changes. Whereas what they have learned remains completely theoretical, and they don't find the opportunity. They can't find the opportunity to implement them in the first place. So this is why that is why I wanted to talk about co-learning. This is the same for the design educators and researchers as well. Although we are doing exploring and experimenting and then creating all these data about certain aspects of circular economy and circular design, we need to understand that how all of these stakeholders in terms of education can come together and contribute to each other's processes, because otherwise the mismatch actually, I'm telling this because I have heard about this a lot from my students, and actually when they go out in the first place, and they always talk about how they don't find the opportunity to apply whatever they have learned about circular economy and sustainability in general. So this is a big problem that needs to be addressed. More collaboration with industry and education is required, obviously, but then again, we need to be brave, as Dominique said again. We need to be a lot more braver when we are trying to implement the fruits of that collaboration. And they should not remain completely abstract, you know, the outcomes. Nice tries. So we should be also looking for ways of implementing them. So that is what I think.
That may bring the really designer leaders into the game, which they will force this a new approach, because we need then designers that will really work on this subject. So I think in collaboration with industry, what we learn in academia is just, as a designer, it's not an engineering part, but I experienced it. Engineers are very good in that, proving with evidence what they're doing it, and then showing to the industry that what they're doing will have a benefit in such and such and such area or whatever. But as designers, we are not really educated in that manner. We don't use the proof of the evidence. We don't use the data that much. Lately, I could see that from Ayla's presentation and some other my colleagues' presentation that this new generation designers are more capable and empowered with the knowledge of the science, or with the input from the science, so they can generate really the proof of evidence. What they're doing is a good for the businessman in terms of the business and in terms of the industry. I think we are lacking that part in education. We don't know how to evaluate our acts and processes. Maybe that needs to be also tackled in the educational aspect. So from educational part, but the industry, I think we have also the responsibility to shake a bit governments who are in the political decisions to really make that shift. Because as educators, we have more power than the regular citizens in this aspect. And this is one thing that probably we should be engaging into these decision-making processes. Okay, Koray raised her hands. Koray.
Yes, hello. I would like to ask, this is not directly to ALVISE, but it's related to mostly his point of presentation. The Arup, in our view, shared a lot of projects that involve complex computations and material processing and digital fabrication techniques. And these are all cutting-edge technologies, and with a lot of expertise comes with this. And what you experiment with those projects are very important to show the proof of concept to the construction industry that this can be done. But I am wondering what is necessary to transfer this knowledge or the technology, maybe not as the cutting edge technology, but as a method to the local construction firms, local real estate development agencies, not in the first world countries such as UK or Netherlands or Germany, but Turkey is one of them, and there are also tens of countries that have a very increasing percentage of urbanization and building construction as well. So we have this knowledge of proof of concept and technology, but the implementation seems to be quite far away from what we can expect in the short term. So what do you think, how do you think these methods will be transferred into the common knowledge of the world? Thank you.
Oops, can you hear me? I couldn't hear myself. Yeah, thank you, Koray, for the question. So I'm going to bring you a real example. I believe it's a contractor in Turkey, and it's called Limak. Yeah, Limak built your airport in Istanbul, and is also working on the Kuwait International Airport. And you may know that project. That project is a giant shell roof, 1.8 kilometers, triangular shell roof of 1.8 kilometers. And that project is all built of unique components, several tens of thousands of unique components. These are these are these cassettes that are a composite of steel and concrete. And when we tendered the project, the contractor said, sure, no problem. We are going to build an adaptable mold, and because it is this is a mold that is made out of an array of jacks, and it can change configuration every time it molds one panel. This is something that BİRGÜL and I had seen developed at MIT for Boeing 20 years ago, and never since. The contractor didn't seem to have a problem. For them, it was just a question of, what's the profit of winning the whole job of this giant airport, and what does it involve, and let's do it. And the project is, I believe, nearly completed now. So there is a construction firm in Turkey that is actually adapting to the new design. I would argue that is the design that is a bit more difficult to transfer locally, and the decision making more than the actual construction. And we have another example of a mosque in India. We assumed that this double curved shell concrete mosque was going to be built by Indian workers, skilled Indian workers, and the contractor came back with a tender. The winning contractor came back with a tender, and the tender is all made out of CNC foam molds that are made out of, that they are reused over and over again. They had their packing algorithm. They could actually take a lot of shapes out of the same mold. So again, that was, we didn't even assume that was the case. And in fact, it was. So I have a lot of trust in our friends that are building buildings. I have a lot less trust in our friends that are designing building. And given that BİRGÜL has mentioned the government, I'm wondering whether the build, what was it called? Build Back Better is the UK name for the investment in post-COVID to vitalize the economy. And Europe has a similar one with many, many billions. I wonder whether those stimulus projects are actually helping the circular transformation or hindering it. I'm sorry that our colleague from Brussels isn't here now, but I want to use some of that stimulus, and I found out that you can only replace windows with double glazed as part of the eco bonus in Italy. You can't actually retrofit this 200 years old windows that are perfectly fine, except that they are not up to standards. So the influencing the government, BİRGÜL, you mentioned, it is a fantastic area in which we can collaborate. And a lot of effort, any idea, etc., would be an opportunity, will certainly be very welcome from the industry, I would say.
Yeah.
I've raised my hand if it's okay. If I could jump in.
Sure, go ahead.
Because there's two reflections I have. One regarding the government. We all know that they are very busy, and especially in Europe with the EU Green Deal, there has been a tremendous amount of activity. And we as IKEA have been very, very active in this area, trying to influence what the outcome will be. And I think the best way to influence that is to simply show what real life looks like and how incredibly difficult it is to actually create that change, and how difficult it is to move from linear, super optimized value chains to circular value chains. Once you give concrete examples, their understanding deepens a lot, which then it moves on to my second reflection, which is how fast our knowledge and understanding and idea about circularity is moving. Because I have been working within this assignment for the last 4 years, and within this last 4 years, I have seen that the conversation has shifted dramatically from talking about recycling to talking about how do we focus on prolonging material life. And that shift happened in a span of a couple of years, which I know is not fast enough, but this is moving faster and faster and faster. And I think here's where the role of education, whether it is formal or informal, becomes really critical, because we can really start to shape that conversation much faster. So whether it is coming from the industry, or whether it is coming from the education sector, or whether it is coming through influencers and the social pressure that we are seeing from consumers who are expecting this to happen. Because we know from research that 73% of people want to have meaningful impact, but they don't know how. So here we have ample opportunity to shape the future and do it in a faster and faster way.
Yes. I totally agree that, but as this requires the collaboration among, I think this setup now, this environment is a very good start for sharing all our knowledge, and then the joint platform to really change and faster this change, innovation in every aspect. So this will not come from one country, this will not come from one person, this will not come from one school. So it's a united effort. It should be really united effort to create this critical mass, to put all these young minds together to generate ideas. So this, what actually internet and the COVID brought to us is this, it breaks the borders in terms of education, which I really liked a lot. Before there were borders for the educations, there were countries like local setups, closed circles, but now this democratized really very much. And then this is the opportunity when we can really use this. I remember Ayla mentioned this opportunity of online learning and the design studio. Actually at MIT, ALVISE, you will remember, we actually did the first online studio in 2000, back 25 years ago. And then not 23 years ago, when the question of the doing design studio online is possible or not, this was a very controversial approach from the designers, architects. I said that it's doable. We did it 20 years ago and we did it perfectly. I mean, what changed, like, and now we learned through that process, it requires on the people, basically, how they're going to tackle this issue. And I think this environment provides us very good platform, and hopefully this will continue in the future, our sharing knowledge and the experiences as well. So if you have a raising, okay, Olga, go ahead. I was just about to ask, are you going to raise some questions?
Just a small remark now that you mentioned virtual design studios that happened indeed a long time ago for the first time. I think one question would be, can we do the design studio online? The other question would be, now that we are online, what can we do with it? So instead of predetermining what's the outcome of it, let's benefit from the new medium and see where that gets us. Because, okay, design studio has been around for too many years now. Of course, it persisted time, but is it the only way to learn how to design and be in the world? No, it's not. And recent studies have proved that sometimes it can be also a very bad way for teaching architecture and design, not necessarily good. So shaking the foundations, when you do have a new medium and you do have new opportunities, the best way would be to benefit from what lies ahead, just like the fleximold that ALVISE mentioned earlier. So when I want to do modular things and I don't want to have 300 billion molds, what do? I come up with a technology to do that with a fleximold, for example. So instead of looking at what we can how can we replicate things online? It's best to ask what the online component can bring to this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's just for education, because we do have a lot of online programs, and especially the profit ones that are addressed to professionals are very different in kind. So it's a different type of learning where people come in, get acquainted with the concept and the principles of circularity, and get out from this course whatever they can in order to transition their own line of thinking, their own line of work into more circular practices. So this would not have been possible 10 years ago. It would not have been conceivable that I can take an online course along with another 10 or 15 people and really confront my way of doing things in a whole different light. Yeah, thanks.
Ayla?
Great point. I absolutely agree, and maybe I can offer one thought on this regarding how can the new medium influence, new modes of teaching and collaboration. I think, again, eliminating barriers is one thing that needs a lot of exploration, and learning from each other and applying new knowledge in a different setting. I see that as a huge benefit of online education. One thing that I would like to mention, last year, just as the pandemic happened, we had to move to online education. And then I realized, this might be interesting. So that summer, I organized a course on high performance facade systems that within the same setting had students and people from the profession, practicing architects, engineers that were globally located, who took the same class, the same online class. The students were from UMass Amherst, so all of them were local, but meeting within the online medium. The practitioners were from all over the world, many, differences in age range, also representing the architectural and engineering side. So students had assignments, projects, and so on. For professionals, it was just a continuing education course. So they didn't have any assignments, they didn't have any projects. The really interesting outcome was all of the professionals chose on their own time to do projects, to do assignments. And the interesting component was they all used their own projects from practice, either the current projects that they were working on or from the past, to analyze their performance, components, and so on. So that was kind of a really interesting outcome that I did not even imagine at the beginning of the course. Second, a really beneficial thing was interaction between students and the professionals. And through the class evaluations and the feedback that I received, both students and the people from the profession said that the interaction of these two groups that typically do not really meet in educational settings provided so many new ideas, innovative approaches. students were able to learn from practitioners and professionals, like the real world challenges and what happens in practice and so on. And the professionals were able to rely on students' enthusiasm, new ideas, innovative approaches, and so on. So maybe that's also another model that we can look at. The same kind of educational setting that brings together the industry and the traditional students, but in new educational models.
Oh, that's a great model. Yes, yeah.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry, someone was saying something. Please go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead first. I just wanted to add that. I'll wait.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, actually. I mean, it's not just about connecting people online that are physically, geographically disparate, and you can bring them together and have them collaborate. It is perfect, but on top of that, I mean, we kind of need to recognize how it affects the design process, because because I am researching about open design, it's a never-ending process. Iterations are much faster. Collaboration is more diffused. The ways of communication doesn't even have to happen simultaneously anymore. So in this new realm where people can collaborate to just share design objects, design knowledge, design data at different times, it's not time bound anymore. People can actually contribute to any design project anytime they choose to. So when it is so loose, when the process itself is so loosely defined, we need to be able to actually convey this to the students as well. Because online collaboration now is not just about simultaneously coming together in a virtual environment, but it's also ensuring that the design project stays on and continues online, where, if they want to, they can contribute to, is what I think.
Alvise, go ahead.
Thank you. Just adding on this latest comment and ILS, we are doing collaboration with our locally based universities. So where our offices are in London, we work with the UCL BMake group, and we work with the AEA, and we work with the Bartlett, and etc. All of them, Central St. Martin's, we teach a course, and so we were asked to reflect on what's the value. In fact, I say reflect because I'm diplomatic, is it was a little bit more violent than asked to reflect. And so one of the interesting thing is this that came up was this cross-discipline collaboration. So generally engineers, Arup has a lot of engineers, are educated within an engineering environment by engineering professors in engineering disciplines. And then they arrive in the real world, and they find that there is all this social scientists and all these other types, architects, and etc. And so the point there is that maybe it's useful as at the very early stages of the career to spend a few hours for free, as in working collaboratively with students that are from a different discipline. So that came up as the top value for us, because it is pretty realistic. You have someone that is about to become an architect, maybe graduating in a couple of years. So in a couple of years, it may become your collaborator, your client, whatever the relation may be, and it's good to dry run it. And so we cross-departmental collaboration is something that we found very effective and maybe less obvious. Oh, we can't hear you, BİRGÜL.
Okay, thank you always for the comment. We have one questions in the question and answer dialog box. If you can open that dialog box.
I'll read it if no one wants to mention, because I want to add something on the Nico's question here.
Okay, great.
Nico says hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think she works with the construction firm where the concepts that we talk about do not apply in the real world. Basically, she wants she wants to know how we can apply such concepts in a real world environment, such as we spoke just in the last few minutes. And I want to add on this as we are talking about circular economy, but its basis, we also know that this approach is based on systems thinking, and how systems thinking can be applied in different perspectives, from furniture design to building design, facade, anything. It's a multi-scalar, also interscalar approach that we want to apply. And as Torsten and YEKTA mentioned, that these theories can be told and taught to the students, but there's actually the holistic view that they should acquire, and they should read the environment and find leverage points to make some kind of acupuncture, not like a surgery. And I think as educators, one of our responsibilities to teach those students and professionals as well how to look at the construction environment or this market as a holistic problem, and try to find some kind of intervention points, rather than trying to come up with a theoretical view of how these things connect together. But at the same time, they need to tell the problem to a decision maker in a way that they can do improvement with a little effort. So I think we're kind of missing that kind of intervention, how to do interventions and know-how to the students. I don't know how you respond to this, Torsten. Maybe you can take over.
Well, about this kind of gap between different disciplines that that it's hard to bridge. I think we are offering more and more courses that are intrinsically interdisciplinary. So to just give you an example, for example, there are many courses that take different case studies and analyze them. But I'm teaching one course that deals with complexity, and actually that focuses on a single building. And we actually first invite the client, then we invite the architect, then we invite the structural engineer, then we invite the developer. So we invite actually all the key stakeholders of a single project to explain their particular involvement and perspective in the project. And it's quite difficult to organize, to get them all together, but it's very valuable to do it in the same project, yeah, because then these kind of relations can be built, and it becomes obvious that there are very different responsibilities from the different stakeholders. Yeah, so somebody has to take more care of spatial quality. The other maybe is more responsible for a smooth kind of process, and the other one is maybe more kind of responsible for keeping the energy performance down. And it's very interesting to see how these different roles play out in the same building. And my experience is, I think that we need more and more courses like this that actually bring the different stakeholders together. And this course is not only offered for architectural students, it's also for structural designers, it's for people that study construction management, and they also build interdisciplinary teams amongst the students to analyze and work together. So I think this is one way of dealing with it. But I think on the other hand, it's also important to teach concepts, how to deal with complexity and the different roles. And I think Olga also mentioned it, that complexity, system thinking is a key task, because I see many students that are very open to all these new societal challenges, but it's also very easy to get lost, between, I don't know, assessment measurements and the different stakeholders and politics and power games and discourses. So I think it's also important to provide a relatively workable kind of framework to actually try to make sense out of these how I call them, how these messy worlds, that's how it is. It's very complex, and I think, but it's important to teach the tools to pick the things and build the relations that really matter for a specific project.
Okay, Dominique?
Yeah, what I wanted to add to all of this is that I think perhaps one thing that is overlooked in all of this kind of learning is how to learn how to manage actual change. And from the experience of trying to convince a whole entire value chain of IKEA that this is the right thing to do, we have seen that this has actually, other than describing what circularity is, has been a classic exercise in managing change and people's minds, where we have the early adopters, we have the people who follow the curve, and then we have the people who really just don't think this is a good idea. And we have to bring them along anyways. So I think within the concept of teaching these tools and the whole entire idea of circularity, there's also this necessity to understand that you're going out into the world where this change hasn't fully sunk in yet for everybody, and you will have to navigate that. So I think something to consider within the education sphere as well.
YEKTA?
I wanted to add to Torsten's answer to Koray, actually, because I totally agree that the students can get lost quite easily when you talk about all that complexity, all those plethora of factors that can or cannot enable circular economy loops in the first place. That is why I wanted to reiterate the importance of exploring these and formalizing these various new roles for them, because they don't exist yet. Because what we are doing is we are trying to operate within the existing supply chains and material loops and existing actors, where all their capacities were actually built for a linear economy in the first place. So instead of iterating them, maybe at some points we need to identify new roles that are rather hybrid, that kind of involves interdisciplinary knowledge building and an interdisciplinary perspective in the first place. And we need to redefine the roles themselves, not just the designers, of course, also the other actors in any supply chain and in any material loop. That is why exploratory research is very fundamental here. I mean, it's not just data driven. We can always find intervention points in data, through data, and then we can iterate things and make them better, incrementally better. But in the first place, it might be just easier to go back to the drawing board and then create new definitions and for new roles, maybe. That's what I think.
Olga, did you raise hand?
Yes, just as I was listening to YEKTA, there was this phrase that caught my ear in our prophet, that coming from VMRH representative, that's the aluminum consortium in the Netherlands. She said, companies need to stop being competitive to each other and have to start working together. Now, this would have been impossible to say in a linear economy example. What does it mean for companies not to be competitive? That would be completely inappropriate. Yet, I think circular economy requires that people definitely, and companies and individuals reconsider their role through their profession, through the service they provide to the world in a completely different light. So instead of being competitive, it's working together with the others. That's completely changed. And this is, as YEKTA just said, a hybrid, something that we're not accustomed to doing. And this is also our role into passing that to the next generation of learners. How can you be empathetic to the rest of the world, work with the others instead of against them or in competition to them?
I have a difficulty to grasp the possibility of that. This sounds to me like how the governments can function, rule the world without being competitive with each other. That the reality goes towards that, but then how it will really put into action, probably with certain percentage, we should not compete. Governments could not compete, but when it comes to the financial risks and benefits, that should be really clearly defined. YEKTA?
I just wanted to add something to Olga. I mean, it was the perfect way to say it, actually. But I think it also starts with, I mean, we have representatives from Arup and IKEA here, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but even though they're huge multinational companies, and all of these big companies, they kind of need to recognize that with all their wealth and capacity, they still won't be able to address every micro scale by themselves. So they won't be able to. I mean, it's simple as that. They won't be able to reach to every micro scale so that they can actually manage and, you know, succeed in creating these circular economy loops by themselves. So it kind of starts with that recognition. And I mean, as BİRGÜL said, I mean, it is really hard to imagine, but I mean, it is as designers, we are very much used to these wicked problems. So I think that is why we will be able to explore and find solutions for them.
This is very challenging. I can see the raised hands, so I will go over. Then Alois and Dominic.
Yeah, if I could actually, I would like to respond to two of these comments. One is in terms of collaboration, it is absolutely essential. And there is, of course, an element of competition because competition also makes us be better at things, right? But collaboration is essential. And the example that I raised in the first session is the collaboration we have done with H&M, where when it comes to sourcing recycled textiles, this is not, we will never be able to achieve the kind of capacity that we need as IKEA. But when we start to work with Kensek, H&M, and the other contributing brands, we can actually bring our collective knowledge to make sure that we secure a safe and a stable supply of recycled material. So in a way, that collaboration is absolutely essential. We can't continue to do business without it. And in terms of the other question of whether this is a large-scale global operation or local, yes, it's both. And I think this is why it's been so challenging to change the approach to how we work. Because when it comes to some aspects of this, it will continue to be global. But there will be certain elements, like, for example, the reuse loop, that happens close to the customer, that happens in the customer home. And our refurbishment capability has to be also relatively local, using, you know, minimizing the distance it takes in order to actually really take full advantage of making that lifespan longer. So this is a new learning on how to go from only global to also work on both levels and everything in between.
Actually, your examples of the H&M, I mean, brings to my mind that if there is a win-win case, then the companies will collaborate. But that needs to be very clearly defined, like these positions, I think. Ayla and then ALVISE.
I really liked Olga's comment, and I would have to say, I think the penultimate problem and issue is that most of the businesses in design, architecture, engineering, construction are profit-driven, and that's a fact. So I think we need to do some serious thinking and changing of that to define what is the value of our work. Because I would also have to say, and I have been doing research on trends in architecture, engineering, construction for a very long time, also focusing on innovation and so on. And I think the challenge is, you know, changing the operational model and culture of these firms. It's difficult, but at the same time, it's necessary. I think that our industry is facing some challenges, and then the companies, and I'm focusing on the AAC industry, companies that are not thinking about this and that are not changing their organizational structure, culture, mission, vision, and value propositions will have a very hard time existing in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. They may be non-existent. And I have to be honest and say quite openly, I'm not really sure that everybody understands this yet. So I think that's one issue. The other issue, I think this is quite complex. Yes, we need laws, regulations, governmental changes and so on that will influence at the end the way that the businesses are running and so on. And it's complicated. We are different. Countries are different. Our laws and regulations are different. I think, again, you know, coming from the US, I think the European Union is doing a little bit better implementation of circular economy within the business side than the US. This is a completely new concept, and so I think it will take some time, but I hope that it will be pretty soon. The last thing that I would like to mention is lack of transparency and sharing of research coming from the AAC industry. Historically speaking, the architecture, engineering, and construction industry has not done a lot of research or investment into research and development. This is a relatively new thing that happened in the last 2 decades. The reason being societal challenges, environmental challenges, buildings becoming more complex, economic impacts, and so on. There's a growing need to do research from the industry and practice-based research. But I think there are not like unified models. You know, firms are developing their own models and so on. I had the opportunity to lead one of these major research labs in a large-scale architectural company, so I know the difficulties and challenges. But the results are not being shared. I think we have to be also transparent and share the research coming from the industry so that we can improve the entire, design and construction community. If maybe we can look into some of the other disciplines, like technical disciplines, medical disciplines, and so on. We have to do a better job in collaborating and sharing meaningful research results so that we can align our practices with the challenges that our societies are facing.
Actually, before I give the word to ALVISE, I would like that you pointed out about the research, and I came across last month with the Europe Architectural Council report, when actually is criticizing the education of architecture and the importance of the research and the inserting into architecture, design by research or research by design issue. It's very critically raised in the Europe Architectural Council, and advising the schools and the educators to really tackle this issue for the future. So there is a kind of awareness in EU about this, and they're pushing the schools towards that direction, I think. ALVISE?
There you go. Thank you. So a couple of comments back on what we discussed. I raised the hands to speak about to emphasize collaboration. I think that again, different. Our profession, in a sense, is different from the Dominique's industry. So when the pandemic hit, my role as sort of chief explorer in the company dried out completely, because I had nowhere to go except exploring my own house. And so I repurposed myself into a producer. And there was a lot of isolation, and so people responded really well. But we set up a first panel discussion like this one around digital fabrication beyond pavilion or something like that, and there was a huge response. And when I worked with the speakers, I said, what's the purpose of what we are doing? And the purpose is to link with the ecosystem. Right. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this if you weren't interested in linking with the rest of the ecosystem. And so I said, make sure you actually highlight the collaborations. And you saw my first slides when Stuart Smith talked about the circular building. I think there was a whole page of logos of different companies that contributed to their building. And actually there were a few that had dropped at the bottom. I noticed that there were some logos that didn't fit onto the page. So my point again, I guess looking at it from a positive point of view, is that it is the collaboration is there. If you look at our real projects in the real world, there is a lot of collaborations together with our harshest competitors. So when we do these mega infrastructure projects, we work with all the competitors, and we're working completely together as teams. So that's one thing. So is it really that there is so much competition? I also wanted to respond to YEKTA. You mentioned that the multinational companies such as IKEA or Arup I'm pleased to be put next to IKEA. We're a little smaller, but never mind. The won't reach the every micro scale. So in another event like this a few years back, when we were still in person, I presented together following a colleague from Google, and the conference was in the north of England, in a small town, and the audience was there was construction equipment professionals. So these are diggers, those are diggers and things like that, and drills, and that was the audience. And the speaker from Google showed up from Munich. He flew in from Munich, and he arrived and he gave a presentation. Here we're talking about a different profession, luckily, is advertising versus architecture. But I can tell you that the knowledge that he gave to the colleagues in Loughborough about their industry, which is construction equipment, it was up to date. He said, last night I ran a search on my system, and I can tell you that that's what you're going to buy in the next weeks. So it was really, I mean, you know, it attracted an awful lot of attention, and this is a global system that gives you micro scale knowledge. So we have those people around. They don't generally come and study architecture, but they are certainly interested. As you all know, this big tech are trialing, testing the water in our industry in all sort of different ways. They've been doing it for a decade now. So I think that the designers in this need to be aware of that. The risk. So we are collaborative. We can be of a lot more. We need to portray that. And the second point was that the risk is very real from this big aggregators, big tech aggregators. Thank you.
I was muted. I'm sorry. Yekta, you raised a hand.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add to this because, I mean, what BİRGÜL started about this tension between competition and collaboration. I mean, the problem kind of lies with the existing ways of, I mean, making profit and prioritizing profit, but also existing ways of managing intellectual property. It is now against that acceleration that we require for transition to a circular economy. And I'm not saying this only from the company's perspective. I mean, the same is true for the universities as well, for academia, where every university now has a technology transfer office, and every invention-worthy designs are wrapped up and completely hidden away from anyone, unless they are willing to pay. So the existing intellectual property management system is actually preventing us from collaborating properly, really building on the cutting edge knowledge that we each other produce. So this is a problem that needs to be tackled, I believe, but it is also a lot more complex because the whole production system is built on it right now. So, but I mean, I think this is what is preventing, and this is what is lagging behind. I mean, competition makes everything better. I mean, we compete and we make some things better, but then again, unless we share the cutting edge with each other and rely on existing intellectual property management systems, I mean, it's going to be even harder. Because, I mean, there are, I mean, in the law, there are limits to what we can share with each other due to this management system.
That's a good point. Yes, Olga?
Yeah, well, education-wise, this was really worked through the MOOCs. and the creation of online education resources. Now, there was a time that nobody would have access to Harvard or MIT courses and TU Delft courses online and check out what other students of the same course are doing. And it took some time until universities realized that it was not about being copied. It was about contributing, universally contributing to knowledge creation, because everybody will eventually integrate this information in a completely different way. And all learners that are that exist online and watch online courses kind of, have very individual learning profiles, and sharing the knowledge has not led to the replication of results and outcomes. Rather, it created an immense pool of possibilities for learners online. And the creation of individual learning profiles, which to me is amazing, because now people with different background, cultural background or knowledge background, can make their own combinations, their own connections out of the knowledge domains that exist and are freely available in the form of online education resources. Ultimately, I think that this revolution, if I may call it like this, will lead to more openness in the future, because now if we're not afraid to share something that used to be so very well hidden, education modules, educational courses, maybe we will be more eligible to share, research. Because again, research is very individual, and when you share it, you cannot fear being copied, because I don't think there exists a case where somebody who will copy your work will do it better than you who've made it in the first place. Creators will always be the ones knowing more and best, what they've created. So even if you're replicated, you will never be replicated in the same way you've created something. I think there's a great possibility that in the future, all these patents will be freely and openly available to everybody. When it comes to design for disassembly and interconnections, for example, patents, or name it, name the building project, and we can find so many things that can go in that direction. I think it's only a matter of time until everything becomes openly available.
Yeah. Okay, I think with this, if there is no any question raised, we are about to conclude our today's seminar just on time. I think we had a very quite fruitful discussion. I benefited a lot, and I think our audiences benefited a lot too. I would like, before closing, I would like to thank again to all our panelists for their time and for their openness of sharing their knowledge, experience, and research here. And also again to my group of students and collaborators. I always mentioned 3 names which had appeared on my screen, but now as you are all down, all names appeared, and I missed Hatice Isano, which is a group member who really supported this organization and who will be working in future research, conducting research in this area. So we are, as I mentioned, we are a group of the people in Istanbul located who are collaborating with the academics all over the world, open for the open collaboration that we discussed today, and industry as well. So we are all welcome to people to join our research and our events. We will be announcing our future events as well. Some will be in English, some will be in Turkish, and hope to see you all again in different settings that we will be able to share our experience. Thank you one more time for joining.
Thank you for inviting us. Nice to meet you all, and I look forward to continue this discussion with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same
Likewise,
here.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye. Good night.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Take good care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.